Hello, everybody. I'm gonna move my head around throughout the night here. Good evening. I am pumped for this conversation. The chat room is open. I invite anyone to drop any questions throughout if they have them as they come up. Let me know if you can hear me, if you can see me. Everything looks good. The slides are up, and I'm going to wait for a few more people to jump in the waiting room, and we'll get right to it. Right to it. I hope everybody had an amazing holiday weekend and got to relax a little bit, maybe spend some, thank you. Can see and hear, we're good to go. Hopefully everybody had, like I said, a good weekend and was able to relax, spend some time with family and friends, maybe went to a good barbecue or a good pool party. I know the weather in the Midwest was definitely pool party worthy. It was a scorcher this weekend. Okay, I'm not going to complain. Not going to complain. All right, you guys, I'm going to jump right in with a quick introduction. I think everyone that's joined is already aware of who I am. But just for anyone who's joining that maybe doesn't know who I am or what I do, my name is Sarah Behrens. I am a certified personal trainer and nutrition coach, and I am a one-on-one well-being coach. I'm actually working with quite a few clients right now, and we run the gamut. So this is kind of a big topic with a lot of my clients because it is so correlated with so many different things like you're going to learn tonight. So I'm excited that a few of them are in the room tonight. And that's okay if you're not. I'm going to save this like always and add it to my YouTube channel afterwards. So that way you can go back and rewatch it, share it with your family and friends, and spread the good word because all of these one-on-one workshops are designed to empower you, right? Like it's not a scare tactic. This is not to shame you and tell you all the things that you're doing wrong, but really just to help you recognize some of the things that could potentially be harmful to your health and give you some actionable tools and skills and practices and knowledge that you can take away and make some necessary changes if you feel like it relates to you. So let's jump right in, everybody. All right, welcome. Inflammation 101. We are talking all things chronic inflammation. We're going to learn about what inflammation actually is, the different types of inflammation, what causes it, and how to reduce it to hopefully help prevent chronic disease or chronic pain. All sorts of modern day illnesses really do um, stem from chronic inflammation in the body. All right. Feel free to take notes if you guys want to, but like I said, this is going to live on YouTube forever afterwards, so you can go back and watch it time and time again. It'll be a family favorite, I'm sure. All right, let's talk about what inflammation is. Inflammation isn't inherently a bad thing. It's the body's natural immune response to some sort of irritant to help fight against it and promote healing. So think of if you get a paper cut, the immediate pain, usually there's some redness, some swelling. Um, that is your body's natural inflammatory response. And what it's doing is it's helping to widen the blood vessels, bring extra fluid to the area just to promote healing as quickly as possible and possibly prevent, pathogens from entering your body, especially if it is a flesh wound of some sort. But your body has the same response to really any tissue disruption or substance or something coming into the body that's not supposed to be there. So you can also think of illnesses. If you get a cold, a bacterial or a viral infection or some sort of pathogen or a fungus, all of those things aren't natural to the body. So your body will do its thing and have an acute inflammatory response to help rid the body of those things that aren't supposed to be there and prevent, future harm or infection within the body. So that leads me to the next point, acute versus chronic inflammation. Like I said, acute inflammation is short term. It just means that when that trigger is signaled, whether it is a pathogen that enters the body, a sickness, or an injury of some sort, that is the body's immediate response is that acute inflammatory reaction. So it's usually sudden and it's meant to be very short term, and it's typically localized, which means that it's, stays in that area. If you cut your finger, your whole body doesn't get inflamed. It just is usually that area that has that response. Where chronic inflammation, on the other hand, is a continual sending of that inflammatory response. So it's kind of your body being in that heightened state. We're going to talk about why in a minute, but with no end in sight. So typically, chemicals and hormones will be released in your body when there's inflammation present to help fight whatever is happening. So that's not, like I said, a bad thing. That's your body's natural response. But you want to make sure that it's not staying in that state, because as you're going to learn in a little bit, a lot of nasty things kind of come along with that response. And then this was just a quote, a quote I found from a medical journal that I was reading when I was studying to put this together for you. But the immune system and the inflammatory response are involved in nearly every physical and mental health problem we encounter. So that's just when I talk about modern disease and chronic illness that so many people struggle with. I myself have struggled with numerous of the things that we're going to talk about tonight. And I'm sure as we go through them, you might be able to say, that's me, or a family or friend, someone is probably struggling with some of the things that we're going to talk about tonight. So inflammation is definitely running rampant and is a root cause for so many things. But like I said, hopefully we're going to learn what causes that chronic inflammation so that you feel empowered to make some new, different choices and upgrade your habits in your life a little bit. All right, what causes inflammation? So like I said, you hear this all the time, especially if you're kind of following modern medicine and new science that's coming out, and they talk about the root cause being inflammation. Well, yes and no. It could be potentially the root cause to all of the things we're going to talk about, but what's causing the inflammation? So that's kind of the thing that I want to dive into tonight, because inflammation isn't the bottom of the barrel. There's something that's triggering your body to stay in that inflammatory response long term. So these are some of the things that potentially will cause that, that aren't an acute inflammatory response like a paper cut or a bacterial infection. So the biggest one is food. I know I say this and I preach it all the time, but food is medicine. It really is, but it can also be poison. It can do the exact opposite depending on what you're ingesting. So inflammatory foods, some of the biggest ones to be mindful of and to avoid as much as possible are processed seed oils. That's your vegetable oil, your canola oil, um, you know, anything that's really not extra virgin olive oil, avocado oil, or coconut oil is all a super highly processed seed oil that triggers that inflammatory response over and over in your body. So if you're thinking about all the packaged foods, if you're eating them, or if you're cooking at home using those things, if you're baking, just be really aware, and maybe it's time to really read your labels and upgrade some of the oils that you're using at home. Another one of my favorites to talk about is sugar. I know that's a tough one because we are in a sugar addicted society. We love our sweets and it can be hard to get away from. And even the healthier versions of sugar in excess can cause chronic inflammation. So that's just something to be aware of, especially if you do have a sweet tooth or you feel like your sugar intake is a little bit high. That can be a big primary cause for chronic inflammation. Another one for most people is gluten. Gluten is a big trigger and everyone tolerates it differently. Some people actually have full-blown digestive disease issues with gluten, and some people it might not be so obvious. So I challenge you to try to rid your diet of gluten for even 7 days and then try to reintroduce it and just see how you feel, because a lot of times it has more to do with energy levels or brain fog, things like that that could be potentially happening and you might not really notice because it doesn't cause you any gut discomfort. But gluten is definitely a big one when it comes to the inflammatory response. And then food intolerances. So that's not necessarily food allergies, but certain people can tolerate certain things better than others. This would be like dairy. Some people do really well with dairy, and some people don't do so great with dairy. And again, I know I talk to my clients a lot about this, but so much of it really is quality over quantity too. So being aware of the types of foods that you're eating, especially when it comes to the dairy and the snack foods and things like that, and just making sure that they're made with the cleanest, quality organic ingredients when possible. Okay, so that's my spiel on food. I could talk about that all day. But the next one is sedentary lifestyle. That is a really, really big one because uh, exercise releases, they're called myokines. And essentially, I'm sure you've heard this word cytokines, especially from the past few years. I know we've heard that, and I'm going to talk about cytokines tonight and what those are. But myokines are kind of the opposite because your body produces them as a healing response. And the best way to flood your system with myokines is actually exercise. Your muscles help produce them from the endocrine system. So moving your body, whether that's walking or strength training or cycling or swimming, anything like that, any sort of, movement on a daily basis is going to help prevent chronic inflammation because your body will be producing those myokines that fight against it. On the flip side of the coin, though, you can cause chronic inflammation by excessively exercising. And I know that can be a problem for some of us because we just love it. It's our mental health stabilizer. We love it. It makes us feel good and strong and empowered. And we love a good sweaty workout. But sometimes you can overdo it and cause inflammation in the body. And that can lead to, not being able to lose those pounds that you've been trying to get off. Or sometimes you start to see it in your sleeping patterns and you might not be sleeping as well, or you might be more tired during the day. So that's always something to kind of look out for if you are an exercise enthusiast. And if you're one of my clients, that's why I program rest days because they are a necessary evil. Okay, next one, pathogens, viruses, bacteria, funguses. Like I said, those are usually an acute inflammatory response. If something enters the body's going to do its best to get rid of it as fast as possible if it doesn't belong there. But there are some instances where those viruses and those bacteria kind of hang out longer than normal, or if you have some sort of gut dysbiosis where you're struggling with gut health issues and your bacteria counts are off, or you have more bad bacteria than good bacteria, that is also another thing that can cause chronic inflammation. Injuries, obviously, like I said, tissue damage. So if you have more of a major injury that can cause more widespread inflammation, a paper cut versus a broken bone, think of it like that. Something a little bit bigger is probably going to cause a larger inflammatory response and it's going to take longer to heal. So it might be a more long-lasting inflammatory response. Chemical compounds, some of the ones that I like to prioritize or kind of point out, I'm using the P's on purpose, are the 3 P's: pesticides, personal care products, and plastics. Obviously, there's a ton more chemical compounds that are in our environment when you think about all the things that we're surrounded with, what we put on our body, in our body, next to our body, the clothes we wear, the carpet cleaners we're using, it's everything. These chemicals are surrounding us. So I think just be mindful if you can start to switch to more organic or natural cleaning products like vinegar and baking soda and things like that, where you're starting to get rid of some of the excess chemical exposure. That is always really helpful. And then another one is pesticides. It's so important, you guys. I can't stress it enough to try to avoid glyphosate and the like. Any pesticides, herbicides, rodenticides, they are so dangerous and the science is just coming out about them. So do your best. I know it's not accessible to everyone all the time to buy organic, but when you can, when you're shopping for your fruits and vegetables, especially if you're eating the outside of it, try to get organic because then you can guarantee that it's not going to be covered in those dangerous chemicals. Personal care products, we're going to talk more about that in a second. And you can always go back and watch my other one-on-one workshop on toxins, where I dive really deep into all the different chemical compounds that are found in our shampoos and body washes and lotions and makeup and deodorant and sun protection and all of those things that we lather on our body every day. But just being really aware of them, like I said, we're not here to be completely perfect and you can't escape all of this all the time, but the more awareness you have around it, the more empowered decisions that you can make. Plastics is another one. I know that sounds kind of funny, but that is one of the biggest endocrine disruptors. So it does cause chronic inflammation. So if you are using plastic Tupperware and heating it up in the microwave every day, or if you're putting hot food into plastic Tupperware to store in the fridge, let your food cool down. Don't use it in the microwave. Don't heat it up if you can. And try to avoid plastic water bottles. Those are some of the easiest ways, get a reusable water bottle and then you won't even have to think about it as much. EMF radiation is another one. So, being aware of how much time that you are spending on your cell phone or holding it next to your body, especially. Try not to carry it around in your pockets and that kind of stuff. Keep it away from your body as much as possible. There's all sorts of different radiation and different types of waves out in the air that are unknown, and I don't want to get into all of that tonight, but just being aware of, EMF exposure causing potentially chronic inflammation. Toxin exposure, we kind of just talked about that with all of those chemical compounds. And another really, really big one, and I stress this so much with so many people, but it really is the backbone to your health and longevity. Chronic stress and poor sleep quality can wreak havoc on your body. It can cause inflammation all over the place. It can run rampant in your body when you are not managing your stress well, if you're living a really high stress life and you're not being able to get great sleep at night, because that is when your body is able to truly rest, to truly recover, to clean house, as I call it. That's when everything happens. That's when the magic happens and your body can hit the reset button before the next day. So I know we can't always outrun stress and our lives are stressful. I get it. But focusing on getting really great sleep every night is an amazing way to start. If you're going to choose any of these things on this list, focus on the sleep first. All right, we're getting there. We're getting to the nitty gritty. All right, so these are some of the things that potentially now are coming out. Science has proven this. It's not in a lot of medical literature yet, but hopefully within the next few years, our new doctors coming into the system will start learning more about inflammation, what causes it, and what it's linked to when it comes to modern chronic illnesses. So I just want to talk about some of the bigger ones, just so you are aware of all of these that potentially can stem from chronic inflammation. I want to start with the cardiovascular system. Heart disease and blood pressure or hypertension problems are one of the number one killers, especially in America. We struggle so much with heart-related diseases. They run in our families. Those habits run in our families. And so much of it is due to our lifestyle, right? Like the things we're eating, our stress, our stress levels and our poor sleep quality are big contributors to our cardiovascular poor health in this country. So just being aware of your blood pressure, and if stroke and heart disease runs in your family, then you might want to be just a little bit more diligent when it comes to using these anti-inflammatory practices that we're going to talk about next. Another big one is neurodegenerative diseases. So these are anything to do with your brain health. But this can be anything from anxiety and depression all the way up to dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and even multiple sclerosis. So those are all inflammatory problems, it's scary, but it's also a good thing because you can make some lifestyle changes, right? You can upgrade your habits and hopefully avoid some of that, especially if it, like I said, does tend to run in your personal family. Then there's diabetic complications like type 2 diabetes and blood sugar imbalances, metabolic disorders, weight gain, obesity, diabetes, fatty liver is another big one. And then pulmonary complications. So COPD, asthma, and even allergies, you guys. Allergies is a funny topic to me because we are not allergic to our environment, you guys. We are humans, not allergic to the world. Allergies are a histamine response, and histamine responds because of chronic inflammation. So if you struggle with seasonal allergies, it really probably is coming from some sort of chronic inflammation happening in your body because that histamine, that's just a chemical that the body releases in reaction to inflammation. So instead of taking those antihistamines, I challenge you to look at your lifestyle and see if there's some things that maybe you can tweak to prevent inflammation and watch your seasonal allergies disappear. And then we got bone and joint health. Obviously, arthritis and osteoporosis are big ones, especially as we age. And I think so many people think that they are just, the diseases of getting older. I think everyone just assumes that once you hit a certain age, your body just starts falling apart, and it's not the case, you guys. Inflammation is is the problem, not necessarily the calendar age that you are. And then the last one is autoimmune disorders. So everything from irritable bowel syndrome and Crohn's and colitis. So that's like gut dysbiosis problems, all the way up to fibromyalgia, MS, type 1 diabetes, and even like alopecia, which is a hair loss disorder, and lupus. So those are all considered autoimmune disorders, and they all definitely stem from chronic inflammation. So those those things can sound scary to people, but there is hope. There is hope. So let's talk about the precursor to some of those, so you don't feel like all of a sudden you're going to wake up with some chronic disease or illness because it runs in your family and you didn't see it coming. So these are just some of the common things that you'd start to see because of chronic inflammation before full-blown, disease set in. Let me move my head a little bit. An obvious one, an easy one for people that most people see right away is weight gain. If you struggle with keeping your BMI at a healthy level, or if you're very overweight, it can kind of be a cyclical thing, almost like what came first, the chicken or the horse, because obesity causes chronic inflammation because your body is working so hard, and inflammation can be a precursor to weight gain and obesity. So it might feel a little bit frustrating if you're stuck in that cycle, but if you can focus on, building some muscle and losing a little bit of weight and reducing inflammation overall in your body, you might see the scale number drop a lot more if you're focusing on removing inflammation, anti-inflammatory practices. Frequent illness or lasting sickness. This is a big one I see a lot of the time, not just with seasonal allergies like I was just talking about, but if you're getting sick month after month, even, I know people work with children or they work in offices where people come in sick, but your immune system should be more resilient than that. And one of the key signs that it's not is because it is fighting chronic inflammation all the time. So it's just weakened all over. It's kind of like if you think of your first line of defense being a bunch of knights in shining armor, and they're, instead of standing right next to each other guarding the gate, they're spread throughout your body and spread really thin. So that's kind of the easy way to look at how your immune system reacts to illness and pathogens. So if you're spreading your knights in shining armor so thin because they're trying to fight that chronic inflammation all the time, you're more likely to get sick more often. And you're probably not going to be able to kick it to the curb as fast. So nobody wants that. No one likes being sick. So there's just a little reminder. If you struggle with insomnia, fatigue, or migraines, I know that's going back to the neurological side, but it has so much to do with your brain function, your mood, and even inflammation through your brain can cause chronic headaches and migraines, things like that. So if you're struggling with sleep or you feel really like you're dragging throughout the day, that could be another sign, an early sign of chronic inflammation. Depression, anxiety, and mood disorders, like I just said, there's so much connection between inflammation and depression. And I'm so happy that the science is coming out because I myself struggled for years with some of those mood disorder patterns, and it was pretty awful. And until I really took a look at my lifestyle and things that I had the power to change, no prescription medication was going to be able to truly fix the root cause. It might have band-aided my symptoms, but it was not going to get to the bottom of it. And then digestive disorders. So these are pretty obvious, but if you struggle with chronic bloating, so if you feel like you bloat every time you eat, or if you have diarrhea, or the flip side, constipation, or if you have acid reflux, those are big symptoms, early warning signs too. Joint pain and stiffness, that's definitely, I think, when people think of inflammation, that's the first thing they think of, because that's, again, we correlate it to the acute inflammation, like I talked about at the beginning, where you get an injury or a paper cut. So you think about, if your knees are bad or your wrists are bad, that inflammation is chronically trying to fight that pain and what's happening there. So you can end up with more like rheumatoid arthritis symptoms and different things like that. So that's usually kind of an early sign if you feel like you've got a lot of pain or stiffness, even if you're not very old. And then the last one that it can show up pretty easily and pretty quickly is skin abnormalities. So if you struggle with acne, psoriasis, eczema, or even like rosacea, anything like that would be a possible symptom or a warning sign for chronic inflammation. All right, we're getting there, you guys. All the scary stuff is over. Now we get to talk about the good stuff. So now we know some of the diseases that are potentially correlated to inflammation, you know, some of the warning signs, precursor symptoms that maybe you already struggle with. So now you can take a deeper look into your lifestyle. But now let's talk about ways to reduce it, because I think that's the most important piece of the puzzle, obviously, because you came here to learn how to feel your best. And that's what I want to help you do, just that. So let's talk about, these are kind of my 5 to thrive, I call them. But the first one is exercise. Like we talked about in the beginning, myokines being produced. Somebody is unmuted. Oh, there we go. Anyway, myokines being produced when you exercise. So those help fight chronic inflammation. And like I said, food is medicine, but movement is also medicine, you guys. So make sure you're moving every day, whether that is a walk. Strength training is amazing because you're building muscle and you're supporting those myokines to help fight the inflammation. But moving, especially outdoors, if you can move your body outside, you're going to get all the key benefits. Let's see, nutrition is, you know, the name of the game really when it comes to just about anything, just about trying to change anything when it comes to your health or your weight or your overall quality of life. One of the foundational pieces is nutrition. So high quality protein, fresh fruits and vegetables, omega-3s and healthy fats are going to be the things you want to incorporate. And then, like we said earlier, things that you want to watch out for or remove would be those inflammatory oils. So fried foods are one of the worst, especially if you're going out somewhere because you don't know what type of oil they use, you don't know how it was cooked. So really avoiding anything fried can be one of the very first steps to reduce chronic inflammation. And then, like I said, reducing your sugar intake, you know, treat it as it's a treat. You know, you don't have to eat dessert every night, even if it's a healthy sugar, you know, honey, maple syrup, coconut sugar, those are all great replacements, but you can still eat them in excess and your body can still have the same response. Gluten is another one, like we talked about. And then any possible other triggers like dairy or anything that you feel like you may be slightly sensitive to, just really start to become aware of how certain foods make you feel. And if they don't love you back, then maybe it's time to let them go or just consume them less. You know, I'm not an advocate for getting rid of total food groups completely out of your life, but I think you have to be really self-aware and know which foods make you feel really good and which ones maybe don't. And then on top of that, though, some supplements that you could potentially take that help reduce overall chronic inflammation. Vitamin D and magnesium are great additions if you're looking to add some supplements. It's usually something that most people are, you know, we have an insufficient intake in, especially if you live in the Midwest. So I think adding some supplements can be super beneficial for a lot of people. And then herbs, obviously, there's some anti-inflammatory herbs that you've probably heard of, but turmeric is a huge one. It's got a chemical compound called curcumin in it, but that is a great anti-inflammatory compound. But some other ones, I call them my 4Gs: ginger, garlic, green tea, and ginseng. Those are all easy supplements that you could either get in a capsule form, or you can drink them in a tea, or you can cook with them. They're pretty easy to kind of integrate into your weekly nutrition. So next one is sleep. Like I said, sleep is king. That is number one necessity. If you're starting to make any lifestyle changes, you have to focus on your sleep. So I wanted to share a few simple ways that you can improve the quality and the quantity of your sleep. Number one is get rid of the blue light. Stop watching TV, stop looking at your phone at least an hour before bed. And then not when you wake up in the morning. Get it out of your room, put it in another room so you're not tempted to wake up, roll over, and look at your cell phone. If that's your alarm, I challenge you to go get an old school alarm and put that next to the bed, and just see the quality of your sleep improve almost immediately. We're so addicted to technology, and the triggers that it has in our brain really can be detrimental to our overall sleep quality. So trying to make sure that you get morning sunlight and watching the sun set if you can. That is a great way to reset your circadian rhythm. And that is kind of the key to making sure your internal clock is working like it should. So morning sunlight is so important. Make sure you're waking up with the sun and go outside immediately. You don't have to look great for your neighbors. Just walk outside, watch the sunrise, and you'll get the circadian benefits just from doing that. All right, let's move on. We're gonna get kicked out, so I'm gonna have to talk fast. Stress management. I'm not gonna go big into it, but that is, you have to find a way to manage your stress. I know in modern society, we can't really reduce it, right? There's going to be stressors coming at us from all different directions all day long, but you have to do your best to manage them and find some relief. I did just recently record a podcast episode with my friend Katie, Upwell the Podcast. We talk all about stress management. So I really, I really would love if you went and listened to that, because there's some great information that might help you be able to manage your stress a little bit better in your life too. And then the last one is limiting toxin exposure. Going back to the beginning when we talked about pesticides and plastics and personal care products, all those things that have numerous chemicals listed on the back of the bottle that you can't pronounce. Do your best to see if you can limit some of those. Can you switch to natural cleaning products like vinegar and baking soda? Can you switch to a zinc sunscreen instead of one that has 500 ingredients in it? So start to do your research, start to see where you can cut out some of those toxins in your life. The goal isn't to be perfect. The goal is to make progress. All right, how are we doing? We're hanging in. We're almost done. All right, so this is just some resources that I put together for if you're looking for more information. Obviously, you can go to my website. I have a blog that I try to release a new article every single Monday. Doesn't always happen, but I do my best. But if you search the word inflammation, you'll find a couple key articles. And then while you're there, peruse the other ones, because you never know what you might find that might pertain to you and offer some good information for you. A few of my favorite books I would recommend if you're interested in looking into this a little bit deeper is The Inflammation Spectrum by Dr. Will Cole, Young Forever, brand new book by Dr. Mark Hyman, and If Our Bodies Could Talk by James Hamblin. Obviously, my podcast, I'll do a little shameless plug. The Model Health Show with Sean Stevenson, and The Doctor's Pharmacy. It's spelled with an F though, I believe, and The Genius Life with Max Lugavere. Those are some of my favorites. They talk about this topic quite often, and you'll probably learn something else while you're listening to. There's a documentary on YouTube called Inflammation, Think Again. That one's pretty eye-opening if you're interested in a really short, expedited version of all of this. And obviously, like I said at the beginning, I am a nutrition coach and personal trainer. So if you are looking to level up your life a little bit and change some of your habits and get some support and accountability in the process, hiring a coach is the best way to go, you guys. It is that support that you need, because I think so many people set out on a mission to do it themselves and get so frustrated when they fail. So hiring a coach can be something that is super life-changing. I know I've hired numerous coaches in my life when it comes to business and health and all sorts of other areas of my life, and it has really, really changed so much for me. So, and then I have an exciting announcement. You guys are the first to hear this. I am launching a new group coaching program. It's going to be called the 5 to Thrive program, and the enrollment is going to begin in about 10 days. So be on the lookout. You'll be seeing me all over social media and in your inboxes talking more about what that program is, when it starts, and how you can get involved. So it's going to be a lot of what we talked about tonight, which is exciting. So if you're struggling with chronic inflammation, or maybe you want to nip it in the bud before it takes over your life and you don't have to worry about it as much, this might be the program for you. So I just want to thank everyone for joining tonight. I hope you learned something. I know I was long-winded, but I just have a passion for sharing and empowering people to improve their health. And I know that the more information you have, the more awareness you can you can obtain, the better choices that you can make once you get the ball rolling. So I thank you all again so much for joining me. I'm going to upload this to my YouTube channel tomorrow, so you can find it. It will live there forever. So you can go back and watch and share with your family and friends. That is all I have for you guys. I thank you so much. I hope everybody has a good night, and I'll see you next time.